What is up, everybody? Mr. Curtis here. Welcome to unit number 4, the early modern period, which takes place from 1450 to 1750. This is our fourth time chunk, or our fourth unit. Really, most people, if you take in another class with world history or even U.S. history, this is kind of usually referred to as the Age of Exploration. But when you call it the Age of Exploration, it's very Eurocentric. It really focuses on Europe. And although Europe kind of takes a much more significant role during this time period, we're going to refer to it as the early modern period, which kind of puts it in a more global perspective. And what we're going to see in this period, and as you totally know at this point, and it's not a surprise, is this is an intensification of trade routes and maritime expansion. And what does that mean? It just means that things are going to become more, we're going to see more trade. We're going to see more intensity of that trade, which is kind of a theme that has continued on from the 600 to 600 time period through the 600 to 1450. And now during this period, we're really going to see it intensify even more. So let's kind of get through some of this stuff. Let's go through it. As always, I highly encourage you to take notes. You don't have to come back and watch this repeatedly, and you have all this stuff written down. So number one, just to set the stage, and we'll come back to this in the second part of this unit, but there are some new states that emerge, and I just want to kind of point out some of the main players. So when we come back to which countries are in charge where, we're familiar with these, but a couple different places that are going to have empires. We have Spain, which is going to emerge as one of the major empires. They're going to have a huge empire in Spanish Latin America, which is all of this area right here. Portugal, which is this little tiny piece right here on the Iberian Peninsula, is also going to have control of areas in the Americas as well as into Africa. And we have France, which is going to have areas in Southeast Asia down here as well as in the Americas. Britain's going to step up. We also have a new empire that emerges where the former Islamic caliphates existed and where the Mongols overthrew those caliphates, which is going to be called the Ottoman Empire. And they're going to take over Constantinople, aka Istanbul, right here. And we have some other kind of states that emerge, the Mughal Empire. We have the Safavid Empire right here in Persia. And of course, we have our China and the Ming Dynasty. So we have all of these empires existing. A lot of the areas over here in East Asia have kind of started looking inward, which, as we've mentioned, has led this area kind of open much more so for trade than we might have seen in the past. We have this, like the first kind of main idea is that we have this intensification of trade routes, which is, again, a common theme that carries over from the previous time period. These are the trade routes that we've seen since 600 to 600. This is a continuity, something that has remained the same throughout, where we have these really 4 major trade routes in Afro-Eurasia with the Mediterranean Sea, the Sub-Saharan trade, aka the gold salt trade. We have the Indian Ocean trade here, and we also have the Silk Road. So these trade routes in some areas are going to bring prosperity. We're going to see a lot of prosperity here in the Indian Ocean trade. Some areas we're going to have a little bit of disruption. The Silk Road really falls off during this time period as we see the expansion of the Indian Ocean trade, because it's easier, and this is the reason why, it's easier to trade goods by boat if you have access to good ships and good ship-making skills and good maps than it is by land, because it's just easier to transport goods, and you can transport more goods on a boat. So this is going to all intensify throughout this area. The Europeans are going to hop into this exploration game mainly because they're getting technology that was created from the classical period in China and South Asia, as well as in Greco-Roman period. They're also going to get ideas and advancements from East Asian civilizations, as well as the Islamic world. So a lot of that stuff that we talked about in the last unit with Southernization and the movement of goods coming to Europe as a result of this trade and the Mongol invasion is going to allow for European exploration. So we have these advances in map making skills. Understanding, we have the compass and we have the astrolabe telling us where we are if we're on a boat. So you don't just have to follow stars all the time. We also have better ship making skills. And in the example here of the ship making skills, this is the Lateen sail that was created by the Arabs, aka the Caliphate, for the Indian Ocean trade. And Europeans are going to get their hands on this, and they're going to use this triangle-shaped Lateen sail and try and improve on their own ship-making skills. And they're going to create something called the caravel, which is a fast, easily maneuverable ship. So it can maneuver easy into ports. It can maneuver onto islands. And it's just a lot easier to trade as opposed to what they had before, which was really not advanced ship-making skills. And they were more bulky ships for the Mediterranean Sea. But now that we're in open ocean, we need more maneuverable ships. And we're using these ideas from the caliphates and from the Muslim Arabs who kind of created this as a result of the spread of ideas during the last time period. Also, these ideas that spread, you need to know trade winds. And the Portuguese, who are right here, are going to gain knowledge of how to utilize trade winds when you're sailing. the quickest way from point A to point B is not always a straight line. It is if you're walking, it's not necessarily if you are on a ship. And what the Portuguese realize is that instead of if you're going to the Americas or trying to explore, it's not necessarily easy just to go straight west. What they realize is the way the trade winds work, or the currents work, and the winds work along the Portuguese coast into Africa, is it's easier to go down this way and go into the Atlantic Ocean, as opposed to just going this way where you're fighting the current. It takes a while, it's more dangerous. So they start learning current, which is going to help them explore. Also, we have a lot of new maritime exploration, especially amongst Europeans. So the Europeans are going to get their hands on knowledge through a couple of different ways. So for example, in Portugal, which is located right here, Portugal is going to develop schools of exploration and schools of navigation. So there are going to be people who are educated specifically in in ship making skills, in navigational skills. We're going to create better maps and take maps from around the world and try and develop them. Through this navigation school that's sponsored by the Portuguese king and queen, it is going to allow for more people to explore because the Portuguese crown is sponsoring these voyages, so there is money for it, as opposed to just some random explorer trying to travel throughout the world. The Spanish are also going to sponsor voyages. The first voyage they sponsor is by a man named Christopher Columbus, who is Italian, and the king and queen, Ferdinand and Isabella, are going to sponsor these voyages for Columbus. And Columbus is going to sail. He doesn't hit the Americas, he hits the islands right off the coast of the Americas. Columbus thinks he's in India. He calls the people Indians. And as he hits this area and he comes back reporting on what he's found, it's going to encourage more people to explore. In the northern Atlantic, the British, the French, they're looking more for fishing and some settlements, some for religious reasons, some for monetary reasons, and they're going to really focus on this northern area or North America. And then last but not least, we also have people who are, while they come down into this area, trying to look for, and the ultimate goal is to try and find quicker routes to Asia, to avoid this Silk Road trade, to avoid this new Islamic Ottoman Empire that's settled in this region that we'll not have to trade with if we want goods. Let's cut out the middleman and let's go there ourselves. So a lot of these are attempts to get here. The attempt really was not to get here, but when they get to the Americas, they realize, wow, there's some stuff there that we might want. With this also, there's this new circulation of goods. There are these things called, and follow along very carefully here, there are these things called royal charter companies. And a royal charter company is this: I want to trade and explore with the Americas. So for example, if I live in England and I want to trade and go do merchant activities in the Americas or in East and Southeast Asia, I need permission from the crown. And the crown, the king or queen, gives me permission, my company, my royal company, and they give me a charter to trade. And no one else except people who have this charter can trade. And the goal of this is I, getting this charter from the king, have a monopoly on this trade. Meaning that I'm the only group, my investors, my people who are part of this company, are the only people who can actually trade. And what this allows is, it allows for a monopoly on the trade in the Americas and in Asia from each country. So, for example, if you have a monopoly, and if you've ever played Monopoly, you know the goal is to buy everything on the board, which means that you're the only one who can control it. It means that there's no competition. And competition is good sometimes because if you kind of look here, if you think about the different types of video game systems with competition, they all compete with each other, and competition brings prices of things down because you can't charge $1,000 for the Xbox because people will just be like, I'm not buying that. I'd rather buy the PlayStation for $500. But if you are a European company, a charter company that has a monopoly, you can charge as much as you want for products, assuming that the king has granted you this charter. So we're going to see the price of goods coming back into Europe from these other places, whether it's tea, cotton, silk, and the charter company can kind of charge what they want. These companies are called joint stock companies because investors are pulling their money together and investing in these companies jointly together. And for example, for the British, they have the British East India Company, which you may have heard about in U.S. history. And these investors pull their money into this British East India Company, which is the only company, the only group, the only business in England that can trade in the Americas and into Asia. And they pull their money together. And if they make money, if this company makes money, their investors get paid part of that money. If they lose money, the investors are out. But each of these, this is the British one, there was a French East India Company, there was a Dutch East India Company, and everyone's getting involved with this same kind of idea of How can we make as much money as possible? And to do this, to make as much money as possible, the economic policy at the time is called mercantilism. And the goal of mercantilism is to import less than you export. So your goal as a company, as a joint stock company, is you want to sell more products than you are buying from people. And as these places, as these colonies are conquered by the Europeans, the mother country, for example, Britain, will say, if you're one of our colonies, for example, the American colonies, you can only sell your gold, silver, fur, lumber to our joint stock company. That's the only person you can sell it to, the only group. You can only buy goods from us. So, for example, think about this. The mother country says to the colonies, you can only sell the products to us. If you can only sell products to one group of people, what can they do to the price of those goods? They can keep those, they can say, we're only going to buy you, but we're only going to buy that lumber from you for $10. Now, if the colonies could go to different groups of people, they could sell it for, they could compete against them and get a better price. But because you can only sell to the mother country, the price stays low. Also, then the mother country takes your lumber and makes like chairs out of it. And they're like, hey, here's a chair, but you can only buy chairs from us. So what we're going to do when you buy the chairs, we're going to jack up the prices. So you're kind of getting, if you're a colony, you're kind of getting screwed on both ends. One, it's messed up because you're not getting as much money as you could when you sell the lumber, but then the lumber comes back to you as a manufactured good and the price gets jacked up. So the colonies are going to be treated very unfairly in this situation. And really what it leads to for the mother country, Europe for this case, is they have a favorable balance of trade. They're doing good. They're making a ton of money. If you're a colony, on the other hand, mercantilism is not good for you because you are losing money. And there's kind of this view here, this cartoon of the mother country, who's a woman who looks like she is eaten well. And then you have the colonies coming with gold and silver, with food, with raw materials, and they are the servants basically. And in this whole system of joint stock companies and this policy of mercantilism, the mother country makes a lot of money. And this is going to bring in a lot of wealth for the mother country. And it's going to bring in a lot of money, and they're going to get wealthy off of this. And we're going to see the monarchs gain more power. And in return, or as a result, we're going to see the colonies losing money. And I don't want to give away the synthesis here, wink, wink, but we're going to see in the next time period that we get to where these colonies actually revolt as a result of this because they're kind of fed up with it. So that's what we're going to stop for today. A lot of economic stuff. So if you have trouble with it, as always, take some notes, write some questions down. Ask me in class. This is a lot economic stuff. People tend to have trouble with it, but let me know. As always, have a good day. Thanks for watching.